Back in 2022, I looked deep into the world of the forgotten video game franchise Scribblenauts. Or at least, so I thought it was forgotten. It turns out many people had remembered this series just as vividly as I did. So you know what? We're going even deeper into the lore of Scribblenauts today, analyzing an iceberg of the forgotten franchise, because I'm almost 50 episodes in now and somehow haven't done one of these. If you've seen the first video, there will be a few topics that overlap here, but that's just to be fair to those who haven't seen that video and vice versa. In this video though, I try to incorporate new aspects of discussion and topics that I outright missed or forgot to talk about, especially as it goes deeper. So sit back and enjoy. I have nothing else to add with this live action segment. I just wanted to show that my audio is not bad anymore, so no more mean comments. Magic Notebook. Without it, this entire franchise would cease to exist. The Magic Notebook is what our protagonist Maxwell writes into to spawn literally anything that tangibly exists, with a few restrictions. In the games, you tap on a notebook and use the depths of our corrupted imaginations to solve puzzles to collect the star rights. In the original game, it's not really said how this whole damn thing came into existence. Look, it was a DS game and no one had time to actually develop their stories yet, except for the games that did. So the lore-hungry fans had to wait until the Wii U for that. In Scribblenauts Unlimited, during the opening cinematic, is where we learn that this notebook was a gift from Maxwell's father. Here you go, son. Go screw up the entire world. Be responsible now. Games. During the time that this series actually existed and meant anything to the world, there were 6 original Scribblenauts games, the first of which was aptly named Scribblenauts. This game was okay. It was definitely in the top half of the series. Top half of 6 is still the top half. But it was admittedly sort of underfleshed and not that well executed. And I feel like people only remember this game just because of the idea. The sequel, Super Scribblenauts, absolutely reversed course on this though, introducing everyone's worst nightmare, adjectives. This game was a lot more refined, with the game direction being shifted to being more puzzle-based, and I feel like this is a pretty solid pick for the best game in the franchise. There was then the mobile game Scribblenauts Remix. Now, whether or not this counts as an original Scribblenauts game, listen, I don't make the rules, but if I did, I might just consider this one a port. As said, this was released exclusively on mobile devices, and when I tried to play it last time, my phone nearly lit on fire. This app combined levels from the first 2 games, with the majority of them being from Super Scribblenauts, but as I said in my review, the biggest draw to it was the price to content ratio. It was like $1 for a bunch of levels and another $1 for more DLC. This game would also receive lots of holiday themed updates, and for what it was a really good game and one I still recommend to this day. And it helped this series stay relevant for probably another 231 days, because kids these days probably don't even know what the DS is. Our generation is starting to get old, guys. On the Wii U, we would end up getting Scribblenauts Unlimited, the series' first foray into HD. Going from a DS game to an HD game has given me permanent whiplash that lasts to this very day. See, everyone at the launch of the Wii U would sit there and complain about, oh, there's no games, but then conveniently ignoring this game, which was an absolute banger. Fifth Self followed this up next year with Scribblenauts Unmasked, which was just okay. Scribblenauts Unmasked was a crossover game between the worlds of Scribblenauts and the DC universe, which was really cool 10 years ago. It felt super rushed to me, and the consensus of it seems to be pretty mixed, but personally, I never liked this game. The structure of the game put the concept of levels on the back burner in favor of these randomly generated missions, and it just felt like the product lacked the love and attention that was previously in the franchise. The series would then die for 5 years and come back with Scribblenauts Showdown in 2018. And then it died again because this game was dog shit. This was like a party game sort of thing, except whatever party you would play this at is probably one you need to call the police on. It had its own sandbox mode, except it was borderline unplayable. I've seen Netflix TV shows with more satisfying endings. Maxwell. You gotta love that dead-ass smile. I mean, you could tell he's probably a murderer. Now, to be fair, considering these games have basically no stories, there's not a lot to say about this guy. To a degree, that's fair, as he's very clearly supposed to just be the avatar of the player. But there's so many questions I have. Why does he have a star on his shirt? Why long sleeves with shorts? And if you thought I was joking when I said he was a murderer, in Scribblenauts Unlimited, he literally gives an old man a rotten apple for kicks. This guy's a complete sociopath. I will say this though, I do think it's sad that this series died because Maxwell had all the makings of a classic character, and there were probably worlds where he maybe could even make it over to Smash Brothers. He's got a charming design, and more than 6 people know him. I almost feel like this character was completely robbed, but then you remember he's a murderous psychopath and your sympathy goes out the damn window. Words! Yes, you and I both know what words are. I mean, I'm typing them right now. But it's tier 1 of the iceberg, okay? Be happy I'm not explaining the history of the DS for the 1000th time on this show. There are are 22,000 words in the original game, and looking at the most noteworthy source of all time, homework.study.com, there are 80,000 nouns in the English language. So look, 1/4, it ain't too bad. Or maybe that kind of is bad to miss that many words. I don't know. It's a pretty impressive effort, to be honest. According to the wiki, 5 developers for 6 months would just go through a dictionary, choosing what words to put in the game. They even created their own database called the Object Knot, which let the developers make objects conveniently with reused shapes. So they didn't have to draw everything from scratch or anything, but that still must have been an absolute living hell for those poor developers. As said earlier, they would bring over the corrupted uncle of nouns, adjectives, to Super Scribblenauts. The wiki lists 9,000 adjectives in Super Scribblenauts existing. Really, you guys couldn't make it 9,001? Is this a puzzle level? In the first Scribblenauts, the game was divided in half by 2 types of levels. There were puzzle levels, which would be more centered around coming up with words and solutions to levels by considering all of your possible options, and action levels, which were hellscapes where 90% of the time you would just spawn a jetpack and rope to win. Listen, man, that's all you need in life. Parents are just gonna start sending their kids to school with that. The developers realized in Super Scribblenauts that this original gameplay loop kind of sucked, and so here the worlds were primarily centered around the puzzle levels, which led to some of the best gameplay in the entire franchise, in my opinion. Granted, the differing level types concept existed still to an extent. There were 10 worlds, or constellations, with puzzle levels, and a few worlds with action levels, and they were treated as more of a bonus than anything else, with puzzle levels now being the primary focus for the rest of the franchise. But more importantly, this led to the TV show. Is this a puzzle level or an action level? Which was canceled by NBC after 2 episodes. Co-op! Now this is something I entirely didn't cover in the original video. So here you go, new material, no one call me washed. Now obviously with the DS games being on a console with the power of hand sanitizer, there wasn't really any co-op. There were level editors in this game and you could share your creations over download play if you really count that. But the first true co-op in this franchise would arrive in Scribblenauts Unlimited. Now how the hell would Scribblenauts even be able to maintain a co-op mode? Well, your friends could join in the fray with a Wiimote and wait for the person with the gamepad to make objects, and then they can interact with those objects, and that's it. I appreciate this article from Co-Optimist documenting all this, because I probably could not pay people to play this crap with me, but I love this line saying how Nintendo should let 5th Cell do multiple gamepad integrations. Like, no, Nintendo couldn't even do that if they wanted to. No game even got that at all. They also make the obvious comparison that I haven't yet, that this is basically the second player in Super Mario Galaxy. Or if you want me to make it more modern, like the Pikmin 4 rock throwing mechanic that I also forgot to mention in my review. Now you might ask, why have I forgotten to talk about this in 2 separate reviews? And the answer to that is because this mode sucks and I have nothing to say about it. So we're moving on. Ports! So earlier I said that there were 6 original games, but this franchise would have its fair share of ports and re-releases too. On the DS, we would end up receiving a compilation pack of the first 2 games, which added D-pad controls to the first entry and changed some of the rules a bit too. And of course, like every goddamn Wii U game ever, well, almost, Unlimited and Unmasked would make its way to other consoles in 2018 in the form of Scribblenauts Mega Pack. Now, how on earth do you play this game without a touchscreen? You shouldn't. It's not fun. Yeah, instead we just got this like rotary phone looking system. I mean, this looks like something my grandma would have on the TV. Someone pointed out in the comments of my review that there was actually a normal keyboard you could use in this game. And you know what? I probably wouldn't have hated this game like at all if I knew that. This twin pack would also add some new levels to Unlimited, which were actually pretty good and felt like they belonged in the game despite being developed by New Blood. So I actually give them a lot of credit. Nintendo crossovers. Now, Scribblenauts always had a very blatant love for Nintendo. I do too, I can't judge. In a lot of ways, that makes sense. I mean, Scribblenauts and Drawn to Life both were franchises that looked like they were Nintendo franchises, and lots of parents I remember growing up would consider them that as well. I already pointed out that Super Mario Bros. Level for 1 in my original review, and how this was a complete throwback to, yeah, it's Mario, I don't know what else to say. One thing I completely missed though is that if you type in Ouija, it actually spawns a plumber with green clothes. This of course being a reference to Mario is Missing, which had that cursed meme that the internet remembers to this very day, so I guess it's kind of a deep cut reference if anything, but it's obviously more of a reference to the internet culture meme. Yeah, but screw these knockoffs. I want the real deal. Give me Louie. Well, in the Wii U version of Unlimited, you could type a plethora of Nintendo characters, and by Nintendo characters, I mean Mario and Zelda characters. To be fair, that's all most Nintendo fans even play. We had Mario, Luigi, Fire Mario and Fire Luigi, Peach, a shit-eating grin Toad, Koopas, whatever the fuck this is, Goomba, Bob-omb, Shy Guy, Chomp, not Chain Chomp, just Chomp, Boo, Yoshi's in their eggs, and all the power-ups. As it pertains to the Zelda franchise, of course, there was Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf, who kind of looked like the Wind Waker designs. But we also had Sheik, Ganon, Tingle, Dark Link, whatever the fuck this is, Beetle, Epona, Navi, and all the fixings. Unfortunately, these crossovers wouldn't make it over to the Switch version of Unlimited, kind of like the Easter eggs in LEGO City Undercover. So there's another point to owning a Wii U. You gotta take what you get. There's really not a lot left. Restrictions. So you can't spawn everything. If they actually let you spawn everything you thought of, I think this game would have to be rated M, if not A. Yes, A is an actual ranking. The restrictions are what you would expect, though. No swears, although you can type ass, but ass is a word for donkey, so it's completely fair. Be a mature adult. Obviously, no substances and no copyrighted material, except for Steamboat Willie. I can make that joke now. Scribblenauts family. Look, families come in all shapes and size. I get that. But in Scribblenauts Unlimited, we learned that Maxwell's parents had 42 kids, and I reacted to it for like a half second or whatever, but in that stare, there was a serious amount of disbelief and sheer horror. Like, look at my face here. This poor lady, if she had 42 kids, assuming she was an adult when she started her family, and we assume every cycle for a kid was an even 9 months, she would be 60, which, by the way, doesn't make any goddamn scientific sense, because look, most women don't give birth after 50. I don't know what I'm talking about right now. Maybe there's like twins or triplets or quintuplets in the mix or whatever, but it's just disturbing, okay? It's a kid's game, and they made this lady a superhuman. But weirdly, on top of that, we know from the opening cutscene that these people were like adventurers. So where'd she even have the goddamn time to have kids? Oh, hold on. Now, I'm not going to talk about every family member because there are a lot. You would run across these family members in each world, usually one per each in Unlimited, and you could always play as them in the avatar chooser. You know, just in case you wanted to play as these little crap heads. But of course, one sibling I haven't spoke about is the one girl in the family, Lily. Now, Lily may have technically debuted in Unlimited, but she was actually planning to make her appearance in the franchise a lot earlier, as we can tell by this super crusty sprite. Lily is interesting since she's really one of the only few characters to be recurring in the franchise, making appearances in Remix, Unmasked, and Showdown. But on top of that, she's the only voice we've heard out of any characters in the franchise, as she's the one who narrates the intro, where it's implied, by the way, that she's a mom herself, referring to her parents as grandparents to whoever she's reading to. I honestly thought Maxwell and her were like kids, but clearly I have zero clue how the Scribblenauts universe works, so I'm just gonna shut up. Doppelganger. Well, there's actually one more recurring character, sort of. Now, obviously, our friend Doppelganger is just evil villain Maxwell. Because who doesn't grab their pants in fear due to a man wearing a blue chicken hat? If I saw that in the streets, I'd be running. In Scribblenauts, he was sort of just a joke, but in later games, he would become the series' antagonist, so to speak. He was the final boss in Super Scribblenauts, and in Scribblenauts Unmasked, he had a pretty damn big role, being one of the bigger supervillains. You know, up there with the Joker, Penguin, Lex Luthor, Doppelganger from Scribblenauts, of course. Still waiting for the DC Universe movie on this clown. Drawn to Life. Now, this is sort of a weird one to put in a Scribblenauts Iceberg. Drawn to Life was a completely separate franchise, but I've always considered it the sister series, so to speak, with Scribblenauts, as both were developed by Fifth Cell around the same time with a lot of the same developers. In this game, rather than using words, you would use the DS screen to draw your characters and pieces of the environment. You'd also see the same artists doing the promotional pieces and whatnot, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if there are people out there who genuinely thought they were part of the same franchise as a result. I think my parents even did, which is why they bought me both franchises consistently. On top of that, one thing I've noticed, which I pointed out in my Drawn to Life video, is that both franchises had a weirdly similar trajectory. Two main series games on the DS, a compilation pack with edits, both had a whatever spin-off crossover type of experiment, and both had an abomination of mankind that both killed their franchises. Yippee. Scribblenauts on 3DS. Okay, so people were not happy with me for missing the Scribblenauts Unlimited 3DS port in my Scribblenauts retrospective. That's fair enough, as I was pretty damn thorough with my series review, and I left out what might look to be an entirely different game. I was aware of this existing. I think I even put an image of it somewhere in the video, but I didn't really care to write about it because it's just kind of a weaker port of the Wii U game, and I thought we all accepted that. To begin with, the differences, the visuals are very crusty on the 3DS. I mean, no surprises there. I don't know what you wanted. Was really hoping for my 4K experience on this thing, but no. With that being said, it certainly doesn't look bad by any stretch of the imagination still, especially for the console it's on. And of course, just like with the DS Scribblenauts, there are two screens. The only slight disappointment I'd say this brings is that you play in a 4x3 area as opposed to being able to experience the game in widescreen. So Nintendo with the 4DS, make sure you add two touchscreens. It's very clear the Wii U version though is superior. The object editor that was highly praised there didn't make the cut here in favor of the 3DS being given Street Pass support, which I'm sure a lot of people cared about. And the aforementioned Nintendo cameos, they were sure fine on a Wii U, but they were not allowed on the 3DS. Why? Actually, we have an answer for this one. This was apparently due to a last-minute deal between 5th Cell and Nintendo. And by last minute, this leads me to assume that literally it was decided at the last minute before they printed the cartridges. But honestly, if you don't care about any of that, this definitely wasn't a bad deal at all. It had all the same content in terms of levels and story, and wasn't on a dying console. So this version definitely had a lot of merit to existing, and was probably really smart to create. And if you wanted even cheaper than that, you cheapskates, Scribblenauts Unlimited would come to mobile devices in 2015, which from what I could tell is the 3DS version. The only difference is one is about $35 cheaper. Not making a great argument for why the industry needs handheld consoles still, are you, 5th Cell? And just so I wrap up all loose ends, Scribblenauts Unmasked also came to the 3DS with a lot of the same changes, and I don't think there's anything more to talk about there, but no one yell at me, I'm pointing it out, it exists. It tangibly freaking exists. All right, now that we're a little bit into our deep dive of the Iceberg, if you're enjoying the content, please subscribe and like the video. It really helps me and any creators you can think of out drastically when you support our content and recommends it to other people, so every little bit of support is something I deeply appreciate. And now, back to your just watch the damn video. Tier 3, merch. I talked about a chunk of this in my original video. There were Maxwell action figures and plushies, in addition to a hat you could wear if you wanted to get beat up upon going out outside. I thought I was pretty thorough, honestly, but later, I found out there were Carl's Jr. toys as well, when asking people if there were any topics I missed in the original video. And I'll be doggone, I didn't even know Carl's Jr. has toys. Okay, this Maxwell figure from Carl's Jr. is horrifying. If this is what I see before going to heaven, then I'm asking specifically to go to hell. What's with this gray blocky backpack? There's also I don't know what this is, a circle with a drawing on top of it. Like, what do you even call this thing? Okay, this thing is like a trading card, or stickers maybe. I've always wanted to put the beaver from Scribblenauts on my car. This is a perfect niche for me. I like how this eBay seller put a ruler here. You know, I was hoping this would be 7 inches and not 6, but I'll have to make do. And look, if you needed more puzzle levels, here's an actual puzzle of Super Scribblenauts. It's not that hard. There were actually Scribblenauts Unmasked action figures too, and admittedly, I'm sort of embarrassed I somehow completely missed these when doing my research. I went off of fan wikis for the most part to find my information. And I guess this is probably just when people stopped caring about the franchise, so no one documented it, which honestly makes me kind of sad. And even if you don't care for Scribblenauts and just care about DC, first of all, God bless your soul. And second of all, these are so cool. I'm not even a DC fan, and I kind of want these. There's a lot of them too. It makes me sad to think about how many of these toys are sitting in boxes in some grandma's garages or what have you. Konami cameos. Okay, so I briefly went over the fact that these existed in the last Scribblenauts video, but I didn't really spend all that much time on it. It's not uncommon in different regions for different developers to be the one to publish a game. Sometimes it's done for logistical reasons, sometimes this will be done as a measure to instill faith in the brand, and with Scribblenauts, I have no clue. So, as a result, Konami published the Japanese versions of Scribblenauts and Super Scribblenauts on the DS. So we had characters from Metal Gear Solid, including Snake and Castlevania. Although this only had Alucard. Alucard. I don't actually play Castlevania, I'm sorry. I'm not that familiar with these other franchises because I'm a scrub, but hey, there's Legend of the Mystic Ninja. I'm sure someone really likes that franchise. The ship from Gradius appeared because, like, you can't have a Scribblenauts game without it. Come on, you need it. We also had Manaka Takane from Love Plus. I'm gonna look up this game and probably regret it. Yup, I regret it. There was Mimi and Naomi from Pop and Music. I'm sorry if I don't have much to say, but as someone who has no clue what any of this is, I just see talking rabbits have a mental breakdown. And of course, there was Tokameki Memorial representation. Of course! Shiori Fujisaki. Yeah, I really wish this segment is over because I have no clue what to say anymore. And finally, Parapuru Kun from Power Bros, which feels like an overly specific reference for a baseball game series, but aw, he's so adorable. Also, this segment's over, thank God. This never made it past the DS games, and honestly, that's probably for the best. Scribblenauts Fighting Words is one of 2 known canceled Scribblenauts games. You'd run into people and write a word in a duel. There would be some bonuses and score multipliers based around how effective your word was. There were some cute custom character creators to aid in your adventure, and it seemed like there was an actual story with an all-new character, Mindy. This game continued the trend started in Unmasked, where Maxwell talk, which I personally will never accept, and is ultimately why I think this game was canceled. In a lot of ways, this feels like the true continuation of the franchise, and is a good way to explain what the developers were doing following the release of Scribblenauts Unmasked. We can at least pencil that in our freaking graph. Now, judging by these screenshots, this game reeked of being a crappy mobile game. But to be honest, for the time, that was just kind of par for the course. Unfortunately, it had all the fixings of standard mobile garbage, including microtransactions, just in case you wanted to drop $1,000 on this game. Dude, who would do that? Ugh. just sold my damn kidney, but it was worth it because I got Scribblenauts points. Okay, I have a theory that when a game company just does this, they are just banking on like one kid, someone to accidentally press it and buy it, and then in their terms and services they're like, oh, we can't refund it, because even if one person does it, that's still more of a profit than they'd ever make. I mean, maybe I should be a businessman. I'm making a $1,000 Patreon tier just in case. Downfall of 5th Cell. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, Scribblenauts Fighting Words was canceled in 2016 to a roaring, wait, this game even exists? By the fans. Unfortunately, with canceled projects running amiss at the time, met with a large amount of layoffs, 5th Cell would become a 5th shell of its former self. Scribblenauts was sold off to Shiver Entertainment, who made a really good use of the brand with Scribblenauts Fighting Words, and Drawn to Life also became a pile of trash with 2 Realms, one of the worst games I've ever played. It's really sad to see what's become of both of these franchises. And as of 2024, they both seem pretty dead. The strange part though is that 5th Cell technically still does exist, with their only game since Unmasked being Castle Hold, which honestly just shows how generic and soulless they've become. And as some of you have concluded over my Scribblenauts and Drawn to Life comments, not every franchise is equipped to last forever. You also have to consider that 5th Cell unfortunately had built their games off of trends and gimmicks that weren't really staying prominent in the gaming industry. It's not as fun to have games where you have to type or draw with an Xbox controller, for example. At least I don't think that's fun. With Scribblenauts Fighting Words, it does feel like they wanted mobile gaming to be the future of their company, but they rolled the dice incorrectly twice, and mobile gaming also died. Scribblenauts Comics. With the advent of Scribblenauts Unmasked, not only did they make a bajillion and 3 action figures no one bought, but comic books as well, and not even a small amount of them too. There were 9 of these released over the course of a year. This game got a bigger merchandising push than some Nintendo games. I read some of these in the last video and didn't have really all that much positive to say about it. Granted, it was cute and at least continued whatever lore this franchise had to build up. Looking at the actual comic critics, because I'm sure that's a healthy career in the year 2024, let alone 2013, one of them would give it a 5 out of 10 and called it a cash-in. Ah yes, because I'm sure these comic books yielded a hefty profit. You got them, Mr. Comic Book Critiquer Guy. You got them cold. A collection was released in February 2015, and obviously nothing was produced from there. Scribblenauts Unmasked art competition. Jeez, Unmasked got more promotion than like actual video games on actual consoles, yet none of it worked. These sales would send a corporate bigwig into a damn coma. Just like Jet Set Radio, there was a whole art competition for this game, but unlike Jet Set Radio, this was all digital, which for the era was to be expected. The prompt for this challenge was to draw a DC Universe character in a Scribblenauts art form. The lucky winner of this competition would receive a whopping $1,000, which, you know, it's something. I would take $1,000. Hey, back in 2013 too, you gotta consider that was worth a lot more than it is today. But your art would also be chucked up on their Deviant art account, so you'd also lose all your credibility. But all jokes aside, the final winners made some pretty damn good final entries. I found the winners on some random WordPress site. I'm just gonna assume this is accurate because this is way too niche for someone to like fake. Tier 4, the Neon Cat lawsuit. Everyone's always looking for their damn piece of the money pie, aren't they? But in this case, the developers of 5th Cell were kind of poking the bear for it. So anyone who's my age, the age of crappy iPhones and call me maybe parodies, remembers Neon Cat or Nyan Cat. I don't know if this has a canon name. Just let me be. This was a flying Pop-Tart that was a cat with a rainbow. And yes, this is actually what we found hilarious back in 2011. You know what though? Most memes to this day are just haha funny, stupid humor. So it did set a precedent. So starting in Scribblenauts Unlimited, the devs were feeling quite ballsy and added the Nyan Cat as an object that could be spawned. This would lead to a lawsuit against Warner Brothers, but not just by the creator Christopher Torres, but the creator of Keyboard Cat, whose character was actually used since the early days of the franchise. So essentially this is like the Avengers of cat memes. It's really funny when I say it out loud. Like it's just I can't like get through this line without laughing because it's so stupid. I feel like most people get excited when they hear about a lawsuit thinking it's gonna be some big legal drama without realizing 95% of lawsuits get settled like this one. But like all jokes aside, there probably was a fair legal standing to actually sue, and I bet that made these creators happy as hell because money. Lock's Quest. So if I talked about Drawn to Life, I guess I have a moral obligation to talk about Lock's Quest as well. This is the third pillar, so to speak, of 5th Cell games released on the DS. Now, I'll admit that I haven't actually played this, but if you look at this for even as much as 3 seconds, you can definitely tell it was made by 5th Cell. Interestingly enough though, this game was published by THQ, who were also the publishers of Drawn to Life. It's your standard real-time strategy game, so it's at least a differing genre from both Scribblenauts and Drawn to Life, which were pretty similar in a lot of regards. This game is another dead 5th Cell franchise to add to the pile, now, although it did receive a re-release in 2017, which, you know, I wish they did that with the good Scribblenauts and Drawn to Life games instead of just killing the franchises, but hey, I'm not a corporate shill, so what do I know? Look, if you want me to do a full review of this game, leave a comment below, and I'll think about torturing myself with it. I'll consider it. Scribblenauts Wii. Initially, Scribblenauts Unlimited was meant to be a Wii game. This makes sense when you consider this was the case for a lot of Wii U launch titles. Pikmin 3 shifted development from the Wii to Wii U, and games like New Super Mario Bros. U were clearly a Wii game with a fresh coat of paint. There's not a lot of information about this early version of this game, and doing research is basically impossible because searching Wii just triggers Wii U for every article, which triggers me. The idea of Scribblenauts Wii existing essentially can be traced back to information found on the Scribblenauts wiki, but I haven't been able to find a precise source on this, so take this with a grain of salt, and I apologize for not having more information. Rooster Hat. This is probably the most serious thing I've ever talked about on this channel. Look at this guy. I thought for years of my life he was just some guy with a red beard and hair, like a degen, but apparently it's a damn rooster hat. But I've always just wondered why he would wear a hat like this. My only guess is that it's some sort of psychological response to trauma. Perhaps he grew up on a farm, miserable and unhappy, desperate for his family's love, and he felt he had to wear a chicken hat, just like the chickens that his parents so gladly supported so he could be noticed. Maybe Maxwell, so desperate for the attention, would wear this at school, specifically with the purpose of inciting bullying, because he wanted the attention he never fucking received at home. Anyways, yeah, this rooster hat ended up being a promotional item, and to be completely fair, it's a classic character trait as it single-handedly brings attention to Maxwell. This was also added as a little bonus in Team Fortress 2. Time machines. Okay, so this is a bit of a deep cut Easter egg, although fans are probably familiar with this. By typing a time machine in both Scribblenauts and Super Scribblenauts on the DS, you would be taken to a secret level with star rights. Granted, these never really counted towards anything as far as I could tell. In Unlimited, this would just add a sepia filter and a top hat. I could have done that at home for free. In the first Scribblenauts, there were only 3 of these level situations that would appear, but the developers really took this joke as far as they could with Super Scribblenauts, where 5 different levels had a chance of appearing, with 2 appearing at less than 5% odds each, where you'd meet another Maxwell. This level of commitment for a dumb joke that 99.9% of players would never find is an incredibly charming thing to do, and really showed the level of love and care these developers used to squeeze into these games. Creators in the games. And similarly, the developers of 5th Cell would usually put themselves into their games in some sort of way. Now, a few of them would actually appear directly in the final level of Super Scribblenauts, but if you actually look at the list of them that are in the game, by the end of the franchise, there are 187 game developers that had a specific character model that you could spawn. Obviously, this is noteworthy because this is even more of a deep cut than the time machine, because what are the odds you were just gonna sit there and type Andrew Warthen? I mean, come on, I do that every single day. You guys don't type Andrew Warthen in Scribblenauts when you wake up in the morning and before you go to sleep? All right, yeah, this is kind of an awkward one to talk about. Let's just talk about it, okay? With the advent of Scribblenauts, and especially in 2007, you could bet your vote for either Obama or McCain that people were sitting in their basement typing all sorts of words. Now, I'm not gonna say or include the racist word in this video that made it into the game for the purposes of keeping things comfortable and family-friendly on the channel. So if you really are curious, you could find this story on the old news sites and stuff. It doesn't have a place here. But essentially, there was a word in the DS Scribblenauts that was considered a racist term, which would henceforth spawn an object related to the stereotype. Jeremiah Slaxa, the creator of the franchise, essentially boils this down to a complete accident, citing a separate definition for that word and how the object autofilled, and pointed out the racially diverse casts of characters, which clearly means he's innocent. I'll let you be the judge of what this means. I'm not gonna take any real side here, but it definitely didn't look great for the team. Warner Brothers data mine. So every company has to have a mascot fighting game these days. I think it's a requirement to signing a lease as a video game company. I mean, Nick Dude's made more than Nintendo on the Switch, so Warner Brothers have been working on their own during the past few years, which is supposed to release early 2024, so any day now, we'll keep our eyes on this. This game is called Multivers. It has been in alpha since 2022. The game does actually have a pretty interesting cast of characters. I mean, they got goddamn Scooby-Doo. Interestingly enough, though, in one of the data mines of the alpha, there was a code found for Maxwell from Scribblenauts, with the reminder here being that Warner Brothers did publish the Scribblenauts games. Only time will tell whether or not this is true, or even if he makes it over, as this could be one of those fake leaks, but Scribblenauts is such an obscure franchise that including him in the leaks is almost just enough to convince me it's real outright. Since this game comes out soon anyways, I guess we'll eventually know soon enough. I mean, this entire section may age like spoiled cheese. Astronauts. So the name Scribblenauts might sound a bit weird when you really sit down and think about it. I mean, that's what I think about when I sit down at night. don't look at me like I'm weird. Like, scribble obviously makes sense, as you're scribbling words to unleash chaos into the world. But what the hell does not mean? Well, according to something, I can't find the source, the original concept for the story of Scribblenauts was about an astronaut who went to various planets, using his notebook to help them out. I say according to something because Wikipedia doesn't source it, and the nearest source doesn't even mention it. Journalism is sure a dandy thing. And finally, we have the lost Scribblenauts 3D game concept. Now, this wasn't a real project, and from what we know, it was more or less a concept or tech demo that someone probably made in Maya at gunpoint. I'm lying about that last part, but it's possible. Now, what was lame about this one, in my opinion, was that you wouldn't type your objects into a notebook or anything like that. You would just choose from an endless grid. I guess the developers just thought the journal would be too complicated in a 3D game, but I completely disagree. I think it ultimately would have been more fun than this. Obviously, this is extremely crude, but it seemed pretty well done. I am very curious how this project would have turned out. I don't have a lot more to add to this because it's clearly not a finished game, and it's not something I can really sit down and critique, as it's just a concept or tech demo. But it does make me sad to think this franchise had plans beyond what we knew at one point, and the developers were trying really hard at a certain moment in time to make their games for Xbox One, PS4, Wii U, or maybe even the Switch. They wanted Scribblenauts to continue, and they failed. The developers clearly had passion and potential, and it just never came to be. And that's the Scribblenauts Iceberg. Now look, I can make 30 videos on this topic. There's always going to be something I miss, but if there is something that you wish I talk about, maybe leave a comment down below. And I don't know, maybe I'll consider making a third Scribblenauts video, but that would make me a complete and utter sellout. I mean, I would never capitalize on Scribblenauts like that again, would I? This line is gonna age really badly one day. It just inevitably will, and I hope no one goes back to this video and laughs at me. Okay, I'm gonna shut up now. Go away.